Coffee. Throughout its 700-year history, it's been catalyst for international espionage, artistic genius, and political dissent. It is perked, pressed, boiled, and brewed, prepared steaming hot or icy cold, and is the world's most popular beverage. So just what is gourmet or specialty coffee, and how can you become coffee literate? In this program, we'll answer just these questions and have some fun doing it. You'll explore where coffee is grown and how it is roasted, find out what today's coffee scene is all about, and learn how to buy quality coffee beans and make great tasting drinks at home quickly and easily. So to begin our story, let's start with a look back at this treasured drink. As with all things noble, the story of coffee's discovery is a mixture of fable and loosely defined fact. As legend has it, over 1,000 years ago, a young Ethiopian goat herd named Kaldi awakened one morning to find his flock jumping and dancing with delight. He soon found the source of their excitement, a smallish tree dotted with bright red berries. Following their lead, he sampled the fruit and was soon dancing merrily himself. Later, he gave some of his find to a nearby monastery, providing a new level of enthusiasm to the monks' long evening prayers and launching the coffee industry in the process. For the next several hundred years, Arabian traders carefully guarded coffee's production from the outside world, selling only boiled or roasted beans that could not germinate and grow. Meanwhile, by the 17th century, coffee was slowly making its way from the Middle East through Constantinople to Europe. In the early days, the beverage often met with religious intolerance. Pope Clement VII was at first skeptical and decided it required papal review. Upon trying the brew for himself, however, he quickly determined that this was a drink worthy of baptism, opening the doors for coffee's spread throughout Europe. The first breach in Arabian security occurred in 1690, when the Dutch managed to smuggle seedlings to Java via the Horn of Africa. These far-flung tropical colonies proved ideal for the production of coffee, and the worldwide supply quickly increased. But it took an act of love to bring the New World into the picture. In 1715, the Dutch, eager to make friends with France, presented King Louis XIV with a single coffee tree. Shortly thereafter, an enterprising young captain of infantry, Gabriel de Clou, felt certain that the Caribbean climate of Martinique was perfect for this tree. With much daring and romantic ingenuity, de Clou obtained 3 small coffee plants. However, the journey proved difficult and rations were scarce. 2 of the plants died en route, but the captain managed to keep the last one alive by sharing his own meager supply of water. He was soon rewarded with a bountiful harvest of magnificent beans. And today, all gourmet coffee grown in the Americas can be traced to de Clou and his single surviving tree. Meanwhile, back on the continent, coffee houses were experiencing enormous success. The power of the drink was such that Voltaire, France's most famous writer and philosopher, was said to have consumed 50 cups of the stuff a day. When advised that coffee was surely a slow poison, he remarked, "It must be slow. I've been drinking it for 65 years now, and I'm not yet dead." Coffee also proved popular with artists and great composers. When King Frederick the Great banned coffee drinking for commoners, none other than Johann Sebastian Bach himself wrote his Coffee Cantata. The piece tells the story of a father who tells his daughter to break her coffee habit. This is no easy task for the girl, who declares that no suitor need come calling with intent of marriage, lest he be willing to give her the freedom to make coffee whenever she wants. Even Ludwig van Beethoven couldn't resist the call of coffee. Beethoven meticulously insisted on counting out precisely 60 beans for each cup. In London, King Charles II was so concerned about discussions of political plots for unrest that he issued a proclamation that closed these resorts of disaffected persons who disturbed the peace and quiet of the nation. Said proclamation was promptly revoked 11 days hence, upon threat of the very revolt he sought to intercept. As a side note, it seems that service in these establishments was not always the most swift, so a brass box was often installed with the inscription to ensure prompt service, or what we now call tips. By the mid-1700s, the East India Company had pushed more vigorously the sale of tea, and England, along with her American colonies, consumed less coffee. That is, until a memorable December night that came to be known as the Boston Tea Party. This event, to protest the king's unfair taxation, elevated coffee to the status of patriotic beverage of choice. In fact, coffee houses had already served the colonists well. Daniel Webster dubbed the Green Dragon of Boston the headquarters of the Revolution. And in New York City, Merchant's Coffee House was chosen as the site for a grand celebration in honor of the nation's first president. In the years that transpired after the Revolution, coffee became an American passion. But following World War II, as coffee companies competed for market share, they turned to cheaper, less flavorful beans. By the 1960s, the taste of coffee, or lack thereof, was credited with a steady decline in consumption. Today, however, an increasing number of gourmet coffee dealers have reintroduced the world's finest coffees to a thirsty public. Yemen Mocha, Celebes Colossi, Guatemala Antigua, Hawaiian Kona. The names read like entries in an adventurer's diary. Coffee is grown in over 50 countries in an area straddling the equator, from the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn. Let's take a closer look at where some of the more readily available specialty coffees are produced. Africa has some very fine and distinctive coffees, including the original mocha. Some of the most notable producers today are Ethiopia, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Yemen, and Tanzania. In Asia and the Pacific, the coffee comes from some rather romantic and exotic locations. They include India, the Indonesian islands of Sumatra, Java, and Sulawesi, formerly known as the Celebes, Papua New Guinea, and the Hawaiian Islands, featuring the well-known Kona. In the Americas, we find the world's largest producer, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Ecuador, Central America's Guatemala and Costa Rica, and finally Jamaica, home of the extremely rare Jamaica Blue Mountain. So just what is specialty coffee?
Specialty coffee is the best coffee grown in the particular regions where it comes from. It's amazing that there's so many different taste variations from different countries from around the world. For instance, Kenya coffee is a coffee that's very sharp in taste, has very high acidity, versus a Sumatra, which would be is probably the lowest acidity of all coffees, and very musty in flavor, almost an earthy-like tone, and very heavy in body.
Most of the coffee grown today consists of two species, Coffea arabica and Coffea robusta. Although they're similar in appearance, in terms of quality and flavor, they couldn't be further apart. Robusta grows at lower altitudes and has a heavier-bodied, harsher taste. These are typically much lower in price and are most often used in commercial coffees. Arabica coffees, however, are mountain-grown, and they have more complex and delicate flavors. It's the finest Arabicas that make their way to the specialty coffee market. Coffee ripens at different intervals over a several-month period, so the best coffee really is picked bean by bean to capture the peak flavor. The fruit or cherry is about the size of a grape, and it turns from green to a brightly colored red when it's ready to harvest. Inside are usually two beans. When there's only a single more round bean, it's called a pea berry. Preparing the cherry for shipment can take 2 weeks or longer. For the most part, this is a natural process. and the best coffees are usually sun-dried. Depending on the growing region, two basic techniques are used: the more common wet or washed method, which we'll talk about in a moment, and the dry or unwashed process. Dry processing occurs mainly in Brazil, as with the Fazenda Vista Alegre shown here, and in a few smaller regions where the climate is relatively dry. After the coffee is picked, it is spread on large floors and allowed to dry with the skin still on. This skin is later removed, milled to remove the parchment, and separated into different grades for export. Although the methods of growing and processing coffee will vary from region to region, most of the basics are similar. Of all the places coffee is grown, one that has consistently produced a high-quality product on American soil is Hawaii's Kona.
Coffee was introduced to Hawaii in 1825, and there's about 2,400 acres of coffee right now in Kona. I think Kona coffee is special because the region it grows in, you can't duplicate it anywhere in the world. It's on relatively new volcanic land. We have slopes of terrain that are just ideal for wind flow, air flow. We have the cloud coverage that comes in, gives us the shade. And our volcanic soil is something that just produces a very, very unique coffee.
Growing coffee in Kona has been for the most part a family operation, with farms passed down for several generations. Although the farms were small, the families certainly weren't.
We have 5 kids, 5 in a family, a small family. Now, wow, they think you're crazy to have 5 kids. Yeah, we all worked, and I think this is what brought the family really close together. Most of the families had donkeys. I think very few had trucks, because there was no roads, and this is all was up on a hill, and we didn't have four-wheel drive cars at those days, so donkeys was the thing. And but very slow, because when you're coming downhill, well, like here it's downhill, and when it rains, you know how slippery it is. Donkeys are very cautious when they walk. They're really slow, and you just gotta follow from the back. And when you have your whole family picking coffee, and during the peak season, it takes I was hauling coffee almost all day just to bring them down. We try to grow good stuff. You feel proud that it's something people like.
Once the coffee's picked, it's taken immediately to the mill. Often the relationship between the farmer and the processor goes back many years. It's very important that they work closely together. In many ways, they're dependent upon each other's efforts to produce a consistently high-quality product, which allows them to command a high price in the market. In Kona, all of the coffee is processed using the wet or washed method.
The wet mill, or the pulping mill as they call it, is the place where you make the best quality possible out of the coffee. You take the skin off, you soak it overnight, and get the mucilage or the fruit off of the seed, and take it out onto the drying floors and dry it to somewhere in the neighborhood of 12% moisture content before it goes to the green mill for processing to the next step. If you don't rake it properly to where you dry it evenly, you can come up with wet spots in the coffee, and then when that happens, then it affects the cupping of the coffee all the rest of the way down the line.
When the coffee is properly dried, it's ready for the dry mill, the final stage of processing prior to shipment. Here the beans are hulled to remove the parchment layer, then graded by size, and finally run through the shaker table to remove any defective beans. As in every other step of the way, attention to detail is the only way to an excellent coffee. In recent years, Kona has reestablished itself as a premier coffee producer, and many new farmers have taken up the challenge. Many are now offered as exclusive estate coffees, making an already rare coffee even more rare.
An estate coffee is a coffee that's grown on one farm. No other coffee is mixed with it. And it means that if you like an estate coffee that comes from an elevation about 1,500 feet, it has a distinct flavor, just like a wine. And if you like it at the higher elevation, you're going to get a different flavor there. But you can now control your taste buds on where you want that flavor to be, what you want as a flavor. This is what it's all about. It's an excellent coffee. Aesthetically, it's just beautiful to look at. And I know that somebody's going to buy that coffee and get the taste of a lifetime.
Well, there are two requirements for a good cup of coffee. First, that you have a real high quality product to begin with. And secondly, the coffee needs to be fresh roasted. It requires a lot of intense concentration by the roast master to bring out the best, the optimal flavor potential that each coffee has to offer. Each variety has its own unique flavor and character, and the roast master needs to be very attentive to bringing out the best that each one of those coffees has to offer.
We import approximately 25 to 30 coffees, all with their own distinct varietal characteristic. Every coffee is different. They have different moisture contents to start with, and they have different varietal characteristics that may come out earlier in roast or later in roast. It's something that you can't just set a timer on the roaster and walk away from it, and when it buzzes you take it out. It's something that you constantly have to monitor and really keep an eye on to make sure that it gets roasted to the degree that it's actually its best. When the roaster is pulling samples out of the roaster and he's checking that coffee for the proper degree of roast, if he's off even by a few seconds, in some instances you can completely ruin a batch of coffee, or you can miss the degree of roast that's proper for that coffee, and it becomes unusable or something that would not be characteristic of that varietal.
Producing a consistent roast is crucial to a roast master, and the best way to evaluate the coffee's taste and consistency is through a process called cupping.
Cupping is definitely a ritual type task. It's something that you want to do in absolute quiet so you can concentrate on what you're tasting. You can't have any other things in your office or your cupping room that will set off your senses other than the coffee that you're actually tasting. When we cup coffee, we have the green sample of that coffee, the roasted sample of that coffee, and 2 ground samples of coffee in front of that. When you smell the grounds, you can pick up certain defects or certain qualities out of a coffee before there's even water poured onto it. After there's water poured onto it, you can pick up other characteristics out of that coffee that you may or may not have smelt in its dry state. The purpose of the slurp would be it mixes a lot of oxygen in with the coffee as it draws it in your mouth, which draws a lot of the flavor out of the coffee. And it also helps spray that coffee all over every part of your mouth so you get a full spectrum of the taste that it has.
We know there are a lot of fine varietal coffees with unique characteristics, but what about blends? Here's where the skills of the roast master really shine.
Frankly, in my opinion, there's a lot of nice straight coffees that I do appreciate by themselves. But to really produce the ideal cup of coffee with the proper acidity, the proper body, you need to do through blending. You can take all these great characteristics from all these different coffees and create a really great cup of coffee.
2 things have the greatest effect on the caffeine content of a cup of coffee: the species of tree and the darkness of the roast. At the top end of the spectrum are robusta coffees that are light roasted. Next are the arabicas, which when roasted to the same darkness have about half of the caffeine content. Lastly, the longer or darker coffee is roasted, the less caffeine it will contain. Surprisingly, a properly prepared espresso actually has the least caffeine of all due to the method of preparation. What if you love the taste of great coffee, but don't want to be dancing merrily like Caldi and his goats? Are there decafs out there that truly live up to the gourmet label?
The same rules that apply to specialty coffees in general, you know, freshness and quality apply to decaffeinated coffees as well. There's a lot of good decaffeinated coffee out there, and they've made, all of the processes have made significant strides. So people, if they were discouraged before, should try them again. And because the industry has grown so much, there's a lot of different origin coffees that are available, a Guatemalan decaf, a Sumatra decaf, and all those actually preserve some of their character of origin, even through the decaffeination process, and produce very enjoyable coffee.
We now know that roasting coffee is truly an art. But the final question remains. Do roastmasters really drink their own coffee?
I drink my coffee every day, probably more than I should. I am definitely a job ahead.
Some say it started in Seattle, others say it was perfected in San Francisco, but regardless, it flourishes in cities all over the country. Talking about the coffee house scene. People ask me, are there that many places? I say yes, like Lulu's Alibi. Let's go inside.
They come in all shapes and sizes, from richly elegant to comfortably cozy. Known as cafes, espresso bars, and coffee houses, and you'll find them in some of the most unusual locations. Today's coffee house is a descendant of the European cafe. Visit any city in Italy, France, or Spain, and you'll see plazas and street sides lined with places for dining, people watching, and of course a great cappuccino or espresso.
Coffee houses have seen a great resurgence. And I think that's largely due to the fact that more and more people want to get together in an environment of creativity and music and poetry and things like that. So it's very much a 90s kind of thing.
Coffee houses, cafes, whatever, they're taking the place of the alcoholic consumption place in the past, and also the kinds of neighborhood things that we had going on. For example, coffee clutches in the morning when women didn't work. I mean, people all got together in the neighborhood, and we don't find that happening too much anymore. So we're looking for this other place, and I believe we found it in the coffee house.
Coffee houses really do offer an environment that is different than a nightclub type situation where it's loud and you really can't hear a conversation. They're designed for people to just get together and communicate and interact more. It's more of a medium by which people can express themselves and things like that.
Somebody walking into our coffee house is likely to find, first off, a very friendly, inviting environment, and that is a big part of what we do to provide the proper setting for the wonderful coffees that we have. A question that is really frequent from a lot of newcomers to our coffees is that, wow, your coffee is really strong, and it's somewhat overwhelming to them at first try. What they're truly experiencing is a coffee that's of a lot higher quality, it's a lot fresher, and therefore it maintains much more of its original and true flavor. It's a coffee that is just much more flavorful than the coffees that have been sitting around in a can for many weeks or months.
One thing you discover the first time you enter a coffee house is that people sometimes speak an entirely different language.
Making a short ice, tall vanilla.
Double tall skinny lattes are just the beginning. But have no fear, you'll soon be speaking coffee like a native.
There's sometimes a little confusion as to what a latte is and what a cappuccino is. Sometimes The same drink is called a cappuccino in Southern California, whereas it's called a latte in the Great Northwest area. The Italians always drink their espresso straight, sometimes with a little bit of sugar, but never any lemon. Where in the United States, 80% of our espresso is consumed diluted with milk in the form of either a latte or mochas. Latte is the Italian word for milk. If you requested a latte in Italy, you would be served a cold glass of milk.
One of my favorite things to make here at Java City is called a café glacé, and it's real easy to make. It takes a shot of espresso, some whipped cream, some vanilla gelato or ice cream. You take your gelato, you plop it in your cup, you pour in your espresso, and you just top it off with some whipped cream. And there you got it, a beautiful, delicious café glacé from Java City.
One of the great things about coffee houses is that they're all slightly different in their approach to making coffee drinks. This is where the barista or espresso bartender plays a key role. In Italy, the barista is a respected professional, requiring many years' training and apprenticeship. Here at home, it's increasingly easy to find those in the specialty coffee business that take their positions very seriously, yet have a lot of fun doing it. One such individual who has developed a unique technique for creating beautiful espresso drinks is David Schomer.
We started in 1988 with the idea that espresso was a culinary art that was largely misunderstood in the United States. So after 2 periods of research in Italy, we developed latte art here in Seattle, and I'm going to show you how to make a rosetta latte. So to start, preheat the cup with some hot water. Extract the perfect coffee. The steaming emphasizes rolling the milk in a clockwise direction with the steamer. In order to get latte art, you've got to have a very tight foam, no big bubbles. Then you pour with a nice vibrating motion, and you slice it. You get this beautiful thing. Each one looks a little different. This is the rosetta latte. Prego, check this out. There you go.
One of the more popular items in coffee houses today is the flavor drink, featuring Italian-style syrups to make lattes, mochas, and even Italian-style sodas. Several companies now produce over 40 different flavors, which create great opportunities for mixing something for just about anyone's personal taste.
The most popular syrup is chocolate, probably followed closely by almond, vanilla, hazelnut, and some of the berry flavors. So we can become very creative and have a chocolate almond, mocha, raspberry vanilla latte. There's just a multitude of espresso beverages that can be flavored with the Italian syrups.
While we're on the subject of flavored drinks, remember you can now purchase your favorite syrups and other flavors for use at home. They're an easy way to create fun drinks for your friends and family. More about this coming up later in the program.
For me, coffee is really fun. It's fun to sit down and have a cup of coffee with friends. It's fun to sit down and write some poetry or read a book or just people watch. It is fun, and I think we need to have a little bit more of that in our lives.
It's sold in cans, bricks, bags, and boxes, whole or ground, in countless varieties and flavors, and yes, it can be confusing. Coffee is so universal, it's assumed that Americans instinctively know what to buy. Or do they?
Javier, do you want more of that Ethiopian Ferrar?
Oh, the Ethiopian rice is fabulous coffee, but no, we don't have any of that. I really think I'm going to like our new house blend. It's a combination of Monsoon Malabar and the Guatemalan Huehuetenango. A lovely smoky flavor.
Thanks, Javier.
Ciao, Bele. May I help you?
Do you sell coffee?
Espresso? Italiano robusta. Sumatra mandolin, Boca Java, Guatemala and Antigua. Celebes Colossi. Decaf, no? Colombian.
When your consumer goes into the new coffee house or the new corner coffee roaster, they're oftentimes overwhelmed with the enormous selection that is being offered these days, and it's hard for them to make sense of it. And so I feel that our biggest challenge is to make that accessible to our customers and to inform them as to what it takes to really evaluate coffee and how to select and choose for what's going to really satisfy and please their own palates.
Since I wrote the book, The Perfect Cup, people often ask me, what's the best cup of coffee? And I immediately say, there is no best cup of coffee. The best cup of coffee is the one that you enjoy at that particular moment of the day. And it could be a Sumatra, it could be a Costa Rican, it could be a Kenya. All of them are different, all of them have something to offer and enjoy. And I think that's one of the really pleasurable things about the specialty coffee market, the business, and being a consumer.
Here's a drink we like to make down here at the Coffee Merchant called a chocolate caramel latte, something fun you can make at home. First you need chocolate syrup and caramel topping. Squeeze a little on into the cup, just covering the bottom, and a little bit of caramel as well. Take a shot of espresso, pour it on in. You'll need a spoon to mix these up. Just mix on up. Take your steamed milk, pour it right on in, all the way to the top. And just to top it off, put a little bit of whipping cream. And to make it look even special, put a little bit of chocolate and a little bit of caramel. And there you go, a chocolate caramel latte here at the Coffee Merchant.
Whether you pick up your beans in the supermarket or at a specialty store, understanding the basics will help you feel comfortable speaking the language of coffee. Your guide for buying and later making excellent coffee and espresso drinks at home is Joel Bender. Joel is trained and worked as a gourmet chef in some of the finest resort hotels in the U.S. and the South Pacific. He currently manages the Coffee Critic on the San Francisco Peninsula and considers it a privilege to introduce someone new to a great cup of coffee.
Hi, I'm Joel Bender, and we're here to make coffee buying fun. It should be fun. What we're going to do is try to help take some of the mystery out of buying coffee for you and help you find the coffee that's right for you. The place to start is with freshness. Just as you wouldn't go to the market and buy a milk that's out of date, you wouldn't want to buy a coffee that's past its prime. This coffee was roasted this morning. You can tell by the aroma that meets you when you take the coffee, when you open the bag up and you take the coffee out. There's a freshness, there's a snap, there's a crackle. It's distinctive to coffee and only coffee. There's nothing like it in the world. The best way to make sure your coffee is fresh is to ask. Most retailers will be happy to tell you when the coffee was roasted and to let you smell it. The coffee should have a rich and distinctive aroma. But remember, don't touch. It's not unusual for specialty coffee stores to carry 30 or 40 or more different varieties of coffee. Every day I get asked, which one's the best? Well, the best one for you is the one that you like. Now, how do you find out? Are you going to sit and drink 30 or 40 more different types of coffee? Not likely. But coffee stores will often have 2 or 3 different types of coffee brewed every day. And they'll often have specials, daily or monthly, that allow you to sample different types of coffee. If the coffee you're interested in trying isn't on special, talk to your retailer. They may be able to brew you a cup or provide you with a small sample to take home. In any event, let your retailer know what you like and what you don't like. That way, they'll be better able to help you choose the coffee that's right for you. One of the things that has the most dramatic effect on the flavor of coffee is the color of the roast. Now, that's also one of the most confusing. Here's a little quiz for you. From what part of France does French roast come from? The answer, it doesn't. French roast is simply one of the more darkly roasted coffees, as are Italian, New Orleans, and Viennese-style roast. Conversely, you'll also hear the terms American, city, and full city roast to refer to lighter roast coffees. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between these two coffees. Many people are afraid to try dark roasts, afraid they'll be too strong, when in fact a dark roast can often be richer and mellower in flavor. Conversely, the light roast will often have more snap and crispness. In either case, when brewed correctly, neither should have a bitter aftertaste. The first difference you're going to see between these two roasts is the shiny, almost wet appearance of the dark roast. Now, this is not sprayed on. These are the natural volatile oils that are brought to the surface during the longer roasting times. This is how a fresh dark roast should look. The second difference you're going to see is the size. This is 1 pound of light roast that I've weighed out ahead of time, and here I have another pound of dark roast. Notice it's almost 10 to 15% larger than the light roast. These are the same weight. Notice the increased volume. This is because the longer a bean roasts, the larger it gets. So don't be surprised when you buy a pound of dark roast, you walk away with a substantially larger bag than you're used to. Well, we found out how to buy quality coffee. Now, let's have some fun making it.
Honey, that was absolutely outstanding. You have really outdone yourself.
Well, you know, the best is yet to come. I know how much you love coffee. So the other day I stopped by this little coffee house on the way home. The guy was trying to sell me on the Huawei Tenango, but I took the Monsoon Calabar. You know, they only pick that stuff during the monsoon season.
Coffee sounds great, but you know what I really love?
What's that?
A cup of cappuccino. You can make that, can't you?
A cappuccino? Sure, no problem. Wait right here.
Believe it or not, making espresso at home can be fun and easy too. And you can get the same characteristics that you get in your coffees at your specialty coffee store. From the most expensive to the least, they all share some similar characteristics. First, they all have a filter holder and a filter into which the coffee is placed. Then that coffee filter is placed in the group head. They all also feature a steam wand for steaming milk to make the cappuccinos and lattes. Well, what's different about some of these machines? These more expensive machines feature a pump for a more consistent brew. They also feature a reservoir which allows you to brew continuous cups of coffee for your friends at dinner. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you can still get a good cup of espresso. These steam-driven machines allow you to brew 1 serving of espresso and steamed milk. And there's always our old friend, the stovetop espresso maker. This traditional method of brewing espresso still brews an outstanding cup of coffee. So we've got our coffee and we've got our equipment, but we're not going to drink all this today. The first thing to do is to make sure we store our coffee properly. Now, coffee will keep about 3 to 4 weeks if not refrigerated or frozen. The best way to store in the meantime is to use a container like this, which will help keep the coffee cool and at a constant temperature. Now, Any coffee that you're not going to use for 3 or 4 weeks should be put in an airtight container and put in the refrigerator or freezer. What you don't want to do is take that container in and out of the freezer every day to make your morning coffee. That'll cause condensation, which will cause the coffee to lose its flavor and go flat. Now, there are several types of grinders. We have a burr grinder and a blade grinder. The blade grinders are a basic coffee making grinder for your morning uses. The burr grinder has a burr set inside that you can adjust to a specific depth so that you can get a very consistent grind for uses such as espresso. If you're not sure what size grind you need, check the instructions or talk to your local coffee retailer. Well, we've just finished grinding our whole beans into ground coffee. And now we're going to make several different types of American-style coffee. The first is the automatic drip. The second is the 1-cup or manual pour-over. And the third is the French press or plunger style. To begin with, what sets this apart is the interior well that holds a filter. Now you can use several different kinds. We have a paper filter, either bleached or unbleached. And remember, they come in several different sizes, so make sure you get the size that's right for your machine. Or we can use the permanent gold filter, which doesn't absorb any of the coffee's natural volatile oils, and it doesn't use any non-renewable resources. The Specialty Coffee Association of America recommends that you use 2 tablespoons for every 6 ounces of water. On your carafe, the markings indicate 6-ounce cups, not your 8-ounce measuring cup, nor your standard coffee cup. If that sounds like a lot of coffee, there's a reason. Coffee that's brewed too weak will often be bitter and unpleasant, and that's not what you want to drink. Now we close this up, take our carafe, pour our water in the back. Make sure you replace your carafe, and we turn our machine on. Now we're going to go ahead and start our second type, our 1-cup or manual pour-over. Again, keeping in mind the 2 tablespoon for 6-ounce water measure recommended by the Specialty Coffee Association. I've got some water here that's just below boiling, and remember, don't use boiling water, which will be too hot and burn or scald the coffee. Now let's take a look at our French press. We're going to use coarsely ground coffee, which is just perfect for the blade grinder. 3 seconds is all it takes. And again, keeping in mind our measurements, we're going to add 2 tablespoons. Now, we're going to let that steep for 2 minutes. In the meantime, let's take a look and see how our automatic drip is doing. Remember, any coffee you're not going to drink right away, you're going to want to put into a carafe. This will keep it fresh and drinkable for up to 2 hours. You don't want to leave your coffee on the burner because that may cause it to become bitter and undrinkable. And we wouldn't want that. And let's see. Our 1-cup pour-over is ready. Now that's a great cup of coffee you can take anywhere. Our French press or plunger type, if you notice, has developed a nice thick crust on top which has trapped those rich coffee oils inside. And now we're going to take our plunger, which has a fine mesh screen on the bottom, and we're going to infuse that coffee through the water. And notice as we do, that light tan color becomes a deep, dark, rich coffee flavor. Now, the one method we didn't mention is the percolator. Why? Because we really don't recommend it. Percolators will recirculate boiled coffee over and over through the grinds, accentuating bitter flavors. Well, there you have it. 3 excellent ways of making brewed American coffee. Now you're ready to make espresso, which means it's a good time to ask, what is espresso? Espresso is made when small amounts of very hot water are forced through finely ground coffee. Speaking of which, what makes a good espresso roast? As we said earlier, you want a finely ground coffee, and that's where our burr grinder comes in handy. Well, we're finished grinding our coffee. Now let's talk about some of the ingredients you'll want to have on hand to make espresso drinks. You may well want to have some sugar. You'll certainly want to have some milk for steaming and frothing. I recommend you use non-fat. You'll find it's a lot easier to steam and froth. Whipped cream makes a great topping. For mochas, sweetened or unsweetened chocolate. Vanilla syrup makes a great addition, as do the flavored syrups, which come in any number of varieties. Cinnamon and nutmeg to sprinkle on top, and a nice freshly grated dark chocolate to sprinkle on top too. And we might even want to add a little orange zest, just for fun. Now, let's make some drinks. Espresso drinks begin with espresso, so let's begin there. To get our machine going, we need to plug it in and turn it on, but make sure there's water in it first. Now, your instruction book will recommend 5 to 10 minutes preheat time. In reality, it's more like 20 to 30. If your machine isn't hot enough, you won't be happy with the results. So, now that our machine's preheated, what we do is we take our group handle out, take our filter out. Inside, you'll see there's either a single or a double basket. In this case, I've got a single basket, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my finely ground coffee, going to take my scoop, level it out, fill it in, make sure you tamp it down, and wipe it off. Don't tamp down too tight. If the machine has to work too hard to force the water through, it'll burn the coffee. Place the group handle up and in and lock it down tight. Don't squeeze too hard, you can spread the threads. Make sure you have your cup underneath, and you're ready for espresso. In about 10 to 15 seconds, the water will start coming out, and you'll see a nice, rich cup. You want about 1.5 ounces of fluid, and on top you should see a nice, rich crema. Now there's an espresso, the basis of all the drinks that are to come. Now let's make a cappuccino. The difference between a cappuccino and espresso is the addition of a little steamed milk and the foam that we develop when we steam the milk. We start with using fresh milk, cold milk. Will steam much better in a cold pitcher. Now let's steam some milk. Put the milk up just below the level of the steaming tube. Open the steamer up and begin moving the pitcher in a circular motion. This will help give you a better froth. Now what you're hearing is the exchange of air as the frother moves about. If you have a thermometer at home, go ahead and use it. One of those little tailor-made meat thermometers are great. You want to get between about 125 and 130 degrees. And now we're getting a nice creamy froth. Okay, you see it begin to rise. And then we go right to our espresso button. We'll set this aside, tamp it down, let some of the milk and froth separate. And we keep an eye on our espresso. Great. Now we're going to turn that espresso into a cappuccino. We'll let a little steamed milk in just for flavoring, and then take this nice foam. Look at that. And we're going to reach for our cinnamon and nutmeg. You can add some of the chocolate we grated earlier. And look at that. A classic cappuccino. Now we're going to make one of the most popular drinks today, the latte. Now the latte is different from the cappuccino in that we use a lot more steamed milk. First, put your espresso in the big bowl-type cup in which you'll typically find lattes served. And then, using the spoon to hold back the foam, we're going to fill this cup almost all the way up with the milk. Perfect. And we'll take our foam. Okay, there's your latte. Now, a lot of people enjoy putting flavors in their lattes. You can use flavored extracts or syrups like strawberry or any other flavors you might want to try. Now, here's a drink you can really have fun with, the mocha. We're going to start with cool, fresh milk, ground chocolate. Now, you can use either sweetened or unsweetened. I like to use the sweetened. Add several heaping tablespoons. Stir it up. Mix that chocolate up good. Now, we're going to steam this. We're not going to froth this. So we're going to try to blend this chocolate as thoroughly as possible. And then we're going to bring it up under the steaming wand. Now, we're going to put the wand all the way down to the bottom. All right, so we finished steaming our mocha mix. And we set it down. Bring our cup over. Take our espresso. There and there. And add our mocha. Now, here comes the fun part. You can add a little whipped cream. And some of our chocolate shavings. Don't worry about spilling. This is a zester. We're going to take some of these orange zests and layer them across the top. Just a few. Well, we add the finishing touches, and there you have it. A drink that's sure to impress your friends and family. The mocha. Well, there you have it. Coffee is a perfect complement to almost all foods and desserts. So go ahead, experiment, and enjoy. But most of all, remember, have fun.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Joel.
All right, I'll make more.
Hi, we're going to make a white chocolate mocha, one of the favorites here at Coffee Republic. What you need to do this is 3 tablespoons of white chocolate, stirred in, steamed hot milk. Give yourself a little bit of room there at the top to do a nice little trick. Amaze your friends. You're going to layer the espresso. To do it, pour the espresso into the spoon, kind of slow. It's going to make a nice dark layer there. And now all you need is the whipped cream. Spray it on there. Twist it at the top. Nice and pretty. There you have it, a white mocha from Coffee Republic.
From nomads to noblemen, princes to popes, coffee has survived quite nicely through its long and exciting history. Fine coffees are affordable and available today for everyone to enjoy. So explore, and above all else, have fun.